Right, colleagues, we are back in time, I think, maybe half a minute over. So we are here. Thanks very much. I hope everybody's had a relaxing time slightly. Are we on item 13? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Are we on the one? We've done the annual report.
Oh yes, we did the internal audit. Okay, yes. Sorry, just my ticking is wrong. Yes. Internal audit. Peter and Sandra again. I think it's your choice how you manage it. Go on. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, this is the internal audit plan. I don't propose to go through it in detail because we actually went through it at the previous ARAC meeting in January, and the plan and the list of intended audits was reviewed and approved by the committee members. But at that time, we'd yet to schedule in when we plan to undertake each of those reviews and our target dates for reporting back to each quarterly ARAC. So in the sort of the table towards the back of the report on page 138, we've now indicated which quarter, i.e. 1 through to 4, we plan to carry out the field work, and the dates, the months when we'll be reporting back to ARAC. As it says in the report, they are only indicative because some of these are the best part of 12 months away, and obviously a number of factors could happen between now and then. The plan's fluid. Some of the audits may change, some of the timings may change because of necessity for either ourselves or the combined authority, but wherever possible, we'll bring any subsequent changes back to ARAC to keep you informed, and definitely through the chair of what's going on with the audit plan. So as I say, the plan has already been approved. It's just been resubmitted with scheduled dates for completion of individual reviews.
Right. Thank you very much. Mark, you want to say anything on it?
No, nothing further to add.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? No. I think with that, it's nice to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we are on annual auditor's report. Grant, I think it's yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You've got three reports in front of you today as your external auditors. The first of which effectively is looking to complete or almost close down our work on the 2021 audit, which is the auditor's annual report. And I will be passing over to Helen Linton as a senior manager on the audit, and who's undertaken the work on the significant work on that to take you through that report. And then I will then take you through the plans for 21-22 and also our informing the audit risk assessment report. So I'll hand over to Helen to take you through the annual auditor's report. This is the first report under the new code and in the new format, but I will let Helen sort of take you through this report, and then I'll pick up the 21-22 plan.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everybody. So in front of you, you've got the auditor's annual report, and that is for the 2021 year. So as Grant says, this is the first year of this new approach. Members will be familiar that previously we've had an approach where we've risk assessed your arrangements, and then we've only undertaken work and then commented back to you on the areas where we found risk. This is a very different type of approach where we are actually making a commentary on all of your arrangements. So we're looking at the arrangements for financial sustainability, for governance, and for the 3 E's. So what members will probably notice as well is, again, the objective of this as part of the new code is really to have a much more public facing report. So hopefully members will notice that the sort of language that we've used in this report, we've tried to be less technical wherever we can, recognising that our work is such that that's quite challenging at times, but we've done our best to use slightly less technical language. And again, try and use more diagrams and make it a little bit more accessible. So a slight difference in the sort of types of reports that you've seen from us in the past. I suppose it's been an interesting first year to actually adopt this new approach, given the sort of background of COVID, because obviously the authority has looked slightly different than they would in any normal year. So it's been an interesting one just to try and gather that level of information. So in terms of the approach that we've taken, as part of the audit plan, we will have done an initial risk assessment, and at that stage we reported back to you as a committee that we'd identified one significant risk at that planning stage, which was around that financial sustainability. Again, that doesn't put you in any different place from any other local authority, and that risk at that time reflected the sort of really challenging financial backdrop that you faced. Looking in the detail of the report, you'll see that we've assessed those arrangements, and we are comfortable that you have those appropriate arrangements in place around financial sustainability, and we've made no recommendations therefore in that area. Thinking about governance, at the planning stage we didn't actually identify any significant risks. As we've gone through and the work that we've undertaken in that area, again, we've not come up with what we call significant weaknesses, but members will note that we've come up with just those 2 improvement recommendations, which again have all got responses from officers in terms of how they're going to take those forward. The other sort of key area then is around the 3 E's, which is economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And again, that's about thinking about how you procure services, how you work in partnership. And again, we've not got any recommendations around that area. So hopefully what members will see is that the report describes the sort of arrangements in place. So it might feel that there's nothing new in there to you, but again, it's recognising that this is a sort of public facing report. I think it builds up a picture of a sort of well-run authority that's sort of adapting well to the challenging circumstances. Certainly there are some really good examples in there around collaboration, both internally in terms of how officers work, but also those external communications that you have, and I think it gives you that really good basis in terms of delivery, but also an awareness of those areas where you know as an authority you can do better and where you can improve. So overall I think it's a really positive report. I'm not going to go into any more detail, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
I was pleased to read that particularly on page 155, I think. Overall, the conclusion overall, we are satisfied that the authority has appropriate arrangements in place to ensure. I thought that was helpful to understand. And I think there was a similar comment about slightly different, 158. The audit plan did not identify any risks of significant weaknesses in relation to governance. I thought that's somewhat a reassurance, rather. So I'm not sure whether you want to go through the recommendations. There's recommendations further.
Not unless there's any particular questions.
I think there are. Looking at today's position, we are not even core. Technically, we are short, and that particular issue is mentioned on page 160, I think. Yeah. And I think there is an issue how the authority addresses it. I could have it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to jump on my hobby horse. I probably raised it before. We had the previously number of times because perhaps I'm part of the furniture here since 3 years. And so I have seen these problems coming up and again. I think something has to be done. Even I could have said, because there's officially there's a cabinet meeting going on in Coventry, which I'm usually invited as chair of the audit. I could have found excuse. Yeah, I'm here. Why I have to go? But when Wendy told me that Mark may not be here because of his test, so I thought, well, it's my responsibility to be here. So we can find any excuse because there's no incentive for the members to be here. That's the point. Authority has to look at some arrangements, how people can be incentivized to be here. So this problem can be addressed. I'm just making a comment. I hope then somewhere somebody listens to it. It's already in the report. So I think that's unless any other colleagues want to make any comments on it.
Maybe Chair, I'll make an observation.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I think it is complex. I mean, it is linked into. I know that the authority has been looking at this because it's well embedded into the Constitution when it was initially set up, and I know there has been discussions in the past about trying to get the Constitution amended, but that needs sort of statutory change. So yes, and I think I mean, it's just important to recognise the role that the committee plays, and therefore why it is important to be corporate in terms of improving financial statements. But I think recognising also that local government as well, and the way the current statutory framework is, you cannot make decisions remotely, hence you need to be meeting in person. So I think there could be changes in the overall national structure that could help in maybe hybrid working. But yeah, we do bring it out that it is important. It is important, especially as committee, to be core given its role. But I do know the authority has been looking to sort of change the statutory framework, maybe to make that coracy a bit more flexible. But again, I just reiterate the comment that anything you can do to bring coracy, and help improve, because really, I suppose it's demonstrating governance and assurance to those people that you represent, and that's the key bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Obviously, we had a problem last time as well for approving the accounts. So it's obviously Mark can do further digging on it. Perhaps Mark, it's your prerogative as a chair of it to liaise with the senior management how it can be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So related to that, the governance issues was raised at the last board and overview and scrutiny. And I believe there's some recommendations coming back in June in respect to one area, which may help to some extent. But the constitutional ones, the legal ones are issues that will take longer to resolve. But yeah, the point is obviously noted. And I suppose when we come on to the topic of the external audit plan and the timing of the process through which the sooner we can get a really clear, definitive view of what is the date of the meeting at which we will be looking to approve the accounts, then we can hopefully, and dare I say it, we get through the elections in May, we'll get to a position whereby we can hopefully ensure that we clearly have a quorum meeting for the meeting at which we approve the accounts.
Okay. Thank you very much. With anything else, Grant, role of Helen, you want to say anything else? Okay. With that, we accept the report.
Yeah, thank you. It's obviously my first year through, and it was a good comprehensive report, and as you say, but also reassuring in terms of the conclusions you reached.
Thank you very much. Sorry, do you want to come back on Grant? Yes.
I was going to get technical, Chair.
Yeah. Why not? That's what you paid for.
In that, normally I'd be going, actually, we were looking to certify the audit closed because we've completed the opinion work, we've completed the effectively, I suppose, value for money work. But there's one element of the audit that we haven't yet completed, which is relating to the whole of government accounts. And that is because the central guidance is not yet out. So it's something to do with authority, it's something to do with us as auditors. But until that comes out, and that is now not expected, I don't think, until June, we can't complete that element of the work. And once that is completed, which is, and generally, and in simplistic terms, that is checking that the whole of government return that you put in is consistent with your accounts, we will then be in a position to certify the audit closed. So I'm just trying to say we haven't quite finished 2021 yet.
Well, that's in the process. Hopefully it won't linger on too much. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, we accept this report. The next one is also yours, Grant. I think is West Midland Combined Authority External Audit Plan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so thank you. So you've got, as I say, you've got two papers in front of us related to the 21-22 audit, and I will pick up on the on Mark's comment around the timeline for the audit as part of that. So, as I mean, part of this actually, slightly unusual part of it in terms of the plan is, I think, coming out of a previous audit or ARAC committee, we were asked about the quality of our audit work. Therefore, at the beginning of this plan, what we have done before we go into that is just summarise for members the outcomes of our regulator, who is the Financial Reporting Council, and also we also are reviewed by ICAW Chartered Accountants. Their Quality Assurance Department, Quad, looks at the work of our auditors. So what I've really done here is, or with all our clients, is summarise the outputs of their work back on our on our review of audits of 1920 audits or 2021 audits, and I suppose in a way this is the first, independent review of the quality of our audit work, and I think, as you can see from that, we're pleased to see that I've spoken to you in the past about making investment in our quality programming and be able to demonstrate that we are taking steps forward as a firm. Well, this show that actually that we can see the beginning of that investment coming through in terms of where the gradings have improved and they've moved on significantly. In essence, we're aiming for 1s and 2s and not 3s and 4s moving forward. So as you can see that we've moved out, we have no 4s. And significant number now more in the grades 1 and 2, and we are working on, and we're not being complacent around those in those grade 3 ones where there are areas for improvement. So I think I wasn't going to go into that much detail on this. Just on the VFM one, it's an excellent result for us, but I just will have to reflect it was on the old system, so it's not on the new system. So they have not looked at our work as part of the, under new arrangements yet. So I'm not going to go into that. But I think I'm just really here to give you assurance that we are investing in the quality of our audit work. There's more audit work to do, as I'm sure your officers will allude to. But this is really here just to say that, just to give you that independent assurance. So it's not me saying that because I would say that, wouldn't I? It's really here as an independent view to say, yes, Grant Thornton is making the progress and that we expect it to do. And they are currently reviewing more files this year. So there'll be another report that should come out around about October, November this year. And that look back at the 2021 audit. So that's really why that's in here as a starter. Okay. So moving on then maybe to the actual audit approach for this year. I'm not going to go, we've outlined some of the factors and they allude to what Helen was saying in terms of the key factors, where you work operating, still operating generally remotely, you're still feeling the challenges certainly within the public transport element of the authority around footfall, passenger take up and income and challenges along those. So it's against that background in relation to where we're setting our audit. But overall, as I say, from our work on the VFM, we're comfortable around the overall governance arrangements. If I take you to page 178, which is, I suppose, it is sort of like the audit on a page, effectively. You are a group audit. And we are going through that process. We've gone through here of looking at where the group boundary is, and the two that we anticipate at the moment being significant components for us will be Midland Metro Limited, not unsurprisingly, and West Midlands 5G. During the year, you've also brought on HGO1 and HGO2, which are sort of building houses for homes companies. We've had a paper through from the finance team and we're going through your assessment of how you classify yourself. That will be important for the final accounts about how you do that. We received, I think, the paper last week, so we're just going through looking at that now. I don't think it will, for this year, the transactions going through those bodies will not be, I don't think, material, so we're not anticipating any issues around group consolidation, but clearly there's something going forward that we'll need to look into. So having said that, I mean, in terms of the group audit, where do we think significant risks lie? Interestingly, you've had the report from internal audit around accounts payable. What we do look at revenue and expenditure recognition from a fraud perspective, and that is still a material fraud perspective. Now, our materiality is around about 8 million. So whilst there might be weaknesses in certain systems, when we look at specifically at the risk of fraud, we're looking for material fraud. That is likely to change next year as the auditing standards flex or change next year. But for this year, we've looked at that. And we're comfortable when we look at where you get a lot of your income and expenditure from, that we can rebut to that significant risk. We will do work in those areas. It just means we won't do specifically tailored work to address the fraud risk within those areas. So we will be testing income and expenditure. Don't panic about that, but we're not necessarily looking at the significant risk. The one we can't rebut, I think, as members of various committees, is management override of controls. So we have to assume that there is some way that management could look to override to controls and affect financial reporting. That generally, from our perspective, we will look at the accounting policies, etc. But that generally feeds into our work on journals, and currently that's what we've proposed to do again for this year. And then we also look at where those, I suppose, in the way those estimates that are subject to greater judgment of the way management and variability. And the one we look at is the valuation of net pension fund liability. So management override controls and the valuation of net pension fund liability continue to be the significant risk we're going to look at as part of this audit. In terms of materiality, we're still comfortable from an UX audit words, we still use expenditure as the benchmark rather than income. And that's because we feel that people from in the West Midlands area who are more interested in focus on how you spend the money that their taxes and grants from government have been allocated, so we do that. So we're taking that forward. In terms of value for money, and picking up on what Helen was saying, is, and I suppose in the report we have types of recommendations. We have improvement recommendations, and then there are key recommendations. The key recommendations only kick in if you've got significant weaknesses. So as you can tell from your report, we had some improvement recommendations, and they were saying we're comfortable with your arrangements, and these are some areas we've identified that you could do even better. So having gone through that process and undertaken our plan for this year, currently as part of planning, we haven't identified any what we would call significant weaknesses. We will still be building upon the report we did last year. We'll still be looking across the areas, but at this point in time, there's nothing jumping out at us that says there's a significant weakness in those types of arrangements around that. Now, planning is iterative. We will keep on top of that as we go forward. But that's just to say that that's where we are at the moment as part of our planning process. That's an overarching thing. If I take you on to page 179, that really is the group. And then if I take you on to pages 180, that's where we've gone through the analysis of significant risks and our approach to those. What I did want to draw to your attention is on page 182, which is an emerging issue around infrastructure assets, because clearly that's really what you do as an authority in terms of the trams, the bus stations, etc. You have a lot of infrastructure assets. There is an ongoing within the sector. Ifrs has just set up a task and finish group to look at accounting for infrastructure assets. And we've had preliminary discussions with the finance team in respect of this, and it's really around an issue has been identified sort of nationally around effectively whether there's been a sort of whether infrastructure assets in the past, and not to it yourselves, but across the sector, have not been written out correctly as new expenditure has come in. Effectively, it's a componentisation issue. We are in those early conversations with the finance team at the moment to understand whether there might be an impact on that. And the SIP task and finish group isn't due to report till June, which isn't great timing, I know, for preparing this year's accounts. But we will have those ongoing discussions. But just to flag, this is one area we probably will be picking up on as the audit progresses. And probably just as a quick update here in relation to SIPFA, did emergency consultation on whether elements of the code around property, plant and equipment which don't directly affect you should be suspended this year, or whether IFRS 6 should be delayed, and IFRS 16, which is to do with leases, should be delayed further. SIPFA has now taking it through its process. There's going to be no change to valuation of property, plant and equipment. As I say, you've got one asset which we're sitting in with that effects, but it's not a material asset. So that still continues. You still need to get that value appropriately. IFRS 16, slightly more complex, is in terms of you have the option now that it has been delayed by, or SIPFA is accepting it as a delay until the 1st of April 24, as opposed to the 1st of April 23. But if you wish to voluntarily adopt, you can. So we haven't had that conversation yet directly with the finance team about if you wish to go early for 23-24. The impact on this year's account.
On that point, when you do this, will you get Mark alongside with the consultation with the Helen and so on? Sorry.
Yeah, it's clear. It's purely your decision. I was about to say the impact it would have on this year's accounts is whether you need to put a disclosure note in.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not a. I mean, I'm not underlying it's a big issue. It'll be your decision about whether you wish to early adopt.
That's why I said Mark should be on board with it. Yeah.
So that's just a quick update there. Okay, about where we are in relation to that.
So I had many years in the commercial sector around the adoption of IFRS 16, so it's a topic that is close to my heart. So very happy to contribute to that discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Please.
So those are sort of the main areas of where we are. In terms of materiality on page 187, that comes back to the 8 million, but just to say we've also identified the senior officer remuneration disclosures as an element we'll set a specific materiality on. And also picking up on page 188, in terms of our IT strategy, we do something called a streamlined approach, which effectively means we'll be looking at it ourselves rather than getting our IT colleagues formally involved in that assessment. For this year, we will just build upon that. And then if I take you to page 190, because I know that Mark raised this around audit logistics, in terms of where and setting that date, in terms of where we are as an audit. I know we've traditionally worked with you to deliver an early audit opinion, but I mean, I think nationally, as you're recollecting, as been reported, there's a challenge both within the I suppose all audit firms to deliver against the revised timelines. We're expecting, although it hasn't come through yet, that well, the look as it is now will extend the local government deadline to the or for publication of audited accounts to the end of November. We are currently programmed though to look to complete our work with yourself by the end of September. So we will be, and that's what the way our resource program is outlined. So in terms of that, we would look to be starting the audit towards the end of June. Primarily in relation to that, as a practice, we have NHS audit accounts that run to like the 22nd of June. So we were looking at that, and then we'll be picking up your audit as soon as we come out of our NHS audit. Therefore, we are expecting year-end audit to sort of run from July through to September, with the aim of issuing our audit opinion at the end of September. So in terms of where that date is, we're still in conversation where that final date of ARAC might be, but that is our overall plan, is to complete the audit of that. You will be ahead of a number of other councils because it's the end of November one. So you will still be, I know you're on council, but you'll be a number of our audit clients. So if we hit that timetable, you will be ahead of the end of November. So we will be going for, I suppose, an early opinion. I know that the finance team would wish us to get back onto the normal groove of maybe issuing by the end of July. I'll be honest and say that currently I cannot guarantee to deliver to that level at that timeline at this point in time. And I think the expectation is, as you've heard about the PSA contract, is I think that we're expecting actually the deadline to go back to the end of September from 23-24, just across the nation. But again, there will be a whole range of audit clients that will need to go in that window. But depending on how that contract pans out, I may or may not be your auditor going forward. We'll see. Have to see how that process. So that's our overall plan on that. In terms of audit fees, on page 191, we just completed some, as a firm, discussions with PSAA. So I haven't got a fee, the final fee yet. It will be, I think it will be broadly in line with your fee from 2021, but I just need to work through the process because there are elements that have changed this year that we need to go through in relation to that. And also we need to understand how we will be delivering the audit for this year in terms of whether it's fully remotely, etc., and the impact that might have upon that. But I've not had those conversations yet with the finance team. I said they only completed their conversation with PSA last week. So there we are likely to propose a change to their scale fee, which is slightly different to what the figure is in here. But once we've done that, we'll come back to the next ARAC with an update on that and having to discuss that with finance. What kind of difference do you expect? What kind of difference you expect? Is the figures are here already 66 and so on. I'm just trying to figure out. Are you going to say up or what? I'm just trying to just suss out the trend of it. I'd have to look at the exact number. I expect slightly upwards.
Seasonally adjusted.
It is joking, but it is to reflect the fact that there is a greater expectation of us auditors in terms of the work we have to do. And as you're saying from our regulator, to meet that quality and that quality bar, audits are taking longer, and that's not just a pandemic thing. We just need to do more work, basically, to meet those quality standards. So, and I think you'll probably see a reset when the new contract comes through in 23-24. Okay. I do need to just bring your attention, sorry, on page 192 and in relation to non-audit work. I think we did report this last year. That's another element, another part of the firm, our advisory team, is undertaking work for Department for Transport in respect of looking at the grants that MML gets. So there's a tripartite agreement between themselves, yourselves and the department. If they find anything, they'll let me know. But again, I think we're comfortable with that. The work they're doing is effectively looking at the grant that was awarded, and it's in line with the information you've submitted or MML submitted. So we're satisfied we're not conflicted in that piece of work, and it's a relatively small piece of work from individually from the firm. So, but we do need to bring that to your attention. But we have gone through difficult considerations about whether that other element of the firm, which I don't deal with, trying to take their work before it's taking it.
So it's just plugging in, somebody else is doing the work and you're overseeing it to link it with this? I'm just trying to understand that.
I don't personally have any
Yeah,
contact with it in that sense. Department of Transport gives MML a grant to support the revenue grant to support income loss, and our advisory team looks at the information that has underpinned that grant, I think, to make sure it's consistent with the department's requirements. So they're looking at that from I suppose they're giving the department assurance that the grant it's given out is in line with their arrangements. And the big ethical thing for us is making sure that, because I'm not placing any direct reliance upon that work, is that there's a communication. If our team does find something that the ethical challenge they won't, that impact upon the audit almost, that they will tell me. But because it's tripartite agreement, then we can give you assurances that no information, if that does come out, it will be transferred or passed on to me to look at as your auditor. Not that I'm anticipating significant, but I don't know.
Okay. Anybody, any comments, questions? Can I just sorry, I just should have asked earlier in the previous reports. There was the issue of, I'm seeking your sort of outside view on it. There was an issue of homelessness. That under one of the directors, there's a 500 people or something has to be housed somewhere, and I didn't see any further mark on it. That has it been achieved or not? I'm just trying to figure out if somebody can look at it. Well, this is the right way of doing it. Obviously, we are audit committee, so there should be some kind of tracking whether it's actually working or just sitting on the side. So that kind of issue. So if anybody can look at it, Mark, will you please have a quick look on that whenever you can, please? Yeah, it's under one of the directors. There's one of the 3 lines underneath. With the photo of the director, then there's 500 people or something. I'm just trying to remember in my head.
Business plan.
Yeah, in the business plan, yes. Yeah. So if somebody can look at it, so that'd be helpful. All right. And also, obviously, audit fee, obviously, you'll have to work with Linda and keep Mark in fold all the time. So then we are all in line. Anything else, Mark, you want to say on this?
No, thank you for the plan. I think, I note and welcome the report of the FRC on your audits, and it's obviously I'm sure you're very pleased, but obviously we welcome that as well. So having been subject to that review process myself personally on a few occasions in the past, I know how rigorous it is. So it's good to see that the results for Grant Thornton are clear as they are, so that was good. I don't think there was much else that I wanted to flag. The materiality I get, just on the pensions risk, completely understand why that is what it is. I think it's going to be quite an interesting area this year, given the volatility of the external environment around discount rates and inflation rates and what the right assumptions are. But to some extent, I think, and maybe this is a question for Louise, we sort of, because we're part of the wider West Midlands pension scheme, we sort of get what we get, don't we, on that, to a large extent, in terms of the actuarial assumptions.
Louise, you want to make a comment on it?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in there. So we've not had our final report yet from the actuary, but I'm happy to share that if that's helpful, Mark.
Well, in due course, in due course. I think it's going to be even more, well, for those who like this sort of thing, it's a more even more subjective area this year than it is in normal years, given say the volatility of the inflation environment in particular, and interest rates moving for the first time in decades. So I think that's just there was a reference here to the auditors of Midland Metro, who I thought were BDO last year, but it says it's Williamson and Croft. Have we changed? Or have they changed?
Yeah, can I come in there, Mark? We've MML have recently appointed Williamson and Croft as BDO resigned, but it's only happened in the last few weeks.
Yeah, that's a new information. Actually, that's helpful to understand. Yeah, please obviously keep us informed. Yeah,
I assume they have written the normal letter saying there is nothing associated with their resignation that we need to be aware of.
I can follow that up. I'm not aware of anything, but I'll follow that up.
Okay, would be good to know. Because I say, obviously, I know. Obviously, last year it was definitely BDO. On the timetable, again, this is perhaps one for you, Luke. I think from our perspective, from an ARAC perspective, we just want a degree of clarity as to what the timetable is likely to be. You know, I hear and I sympathise with Grant's observations around resourcing and summer and the timescales. I also understand your desire as a finance team to get everything done as promptly as possible. From an ARAC perspective, clearly we have to hit the 30th of November deadline at the very latest. We will work with you both to make sure that we are in a position to approve the accounts as soon as you both are happy that you've done the work you need to do. So if you could just let us know as an ARAC what the timetable is that you're working to, so that we can schedule that ARAC meeting to make sure it's core, make sure we give the approvals, to make sure we hit the deadlines. So I'll leave that with you to come back to us on there, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, if you insist, I'm very happy to debate IFRS 16 adoption with you, but I can tell you pretty clearly what my view would be. Don't do it until you have to. And then the only other thing I was just going to say was, oh, sorry, Grant, do you still audit? Are you still auditing the West Midlands pension scheme yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I am currently engagement lead for West Midlands Pension Fund. I think Helen did mention that I think you'd raised a question around independence in respect of that. I think in terms of, I think there's two different questions there. In terms of the actual pension fund, I think as you alluded to already, I look at the pension fund in its entirety, and I think there's 600 employees in there or now rather than. So I think in terms of the actual audit of the pension fund, where I just look at all of the assets, all of the, and actually in terms of that liabilities, it's slightly different because it's not on their balance, not on their asset statement. I think there is independence there. Where the interaction comes in is, I think the chair is where I do write to myself from here to gain assurance on IS 19, which I think is where Louise is alluding to. However, the information, the letter we send from here is a standard letter, and a lot of it is actually, it's not requiring auditor judgment. It's saying, can you please confirm the information that the combined authority sent across to the pension fund has been accurately handed on to the actuary. So I don't think there is any specific sort of conflict there within the type of work that we do, and it's not unusual within the whole sector as a whole. You will find across the public sector that auditors or pension funds will have to give assurance to them, just the nature of the way it's structured across the nation. So I don't think there's a specific independence issue. If you want me to write something down, I can do that in a report just to confirm that. So, and
that was right, that's where I was just going. I think it's probably just worth a reference to it rather than. I've not necessarily got a massive concern about it, but I think we should acknowledge it exists and confirm we are comfortable. And then the only other, sorry, Chair, this is the other comment that I had was on two things. One was on, actually, I really liked the second document you sent around, thank you, which was your sort of the discussions you'd had with management around the key risks and the risk assessment. I thought that was a really helpful document. And in there was a reference to fraud risk. This is, oh, sorry, I haven't got a page, 207. And you referenced biggest areas being adult education budget, concessions, ticketing, and treasury management. And I got the first and the last in education and treasury management. I wasn't quite sure I understood what the concessions and ticketing bit, but that's a management response. So actually, maybe that's one for you, Louise, to comment on rather than Grant. What the fraud risk was around ticketing or concessions, and if don't need to respond now, but just perhaps something we should, as an ARAC, be cognizant of your view on fraud risk in those areas. And that, I think, was probably it, actually. But no, I really like that second document. Thank you, Grant, I thought it was really helpful.
Okay, thank you. I was going to go through that, but actually fairly quickly, in the sense of, as you've alluded to, it is your document. I know you're not core it today, but I mean, what this is to demonstrate, and I'm sure, Mark, through your previous experience, that the ISIS require us to have two-way communication with those charged with governance. So this is our way of recording those conversations. What we normally would ask is the committee, and I suppose you can, just to say, is it consistent with your knowledge and understanding of the authority? And to pick up your point, is there anything in there that either you're not comfortable with or you don't believe is a fair reflection, or I suppose anything missing? So we've gone through this and overall we're comfortable with the responses. I think the one area we're just having some further conversations on is whether it should reflect further some of the fair value judgments you have around, because you do actually have some sort of, you have a material soft loan, which is very technical, I know, but then you have it and you give loans out to a number. So we'll just have a conversation about whether, in terms of estimates, we might need to just bring that to your attention around what the approach to that is. But other than that, we're comfortable with what's in here, and really we'd normally ask the committee to say, are you comfortable that it reflects the authority?
Can I ask Louise on this one, because you said is it consistent with the approach? Because probably she's better placed to answer that question than us, because some of us are part-timers. So it'd be a good idea if we understand that it's a consistency of this report, and is my understanding is, yes, we did discuss it. Sorry, coming back on the issue, I remember last year it's sort of a joking jibe on you, Grant, when I said, do you declare the interest because you're on the other side as well? I'm just trying to understand. Just a suggestion on that, or maybe I'm totally wrong because I'm not auditor and you are professional. When it is written from this authority to the pension fund, maybe you can use Helen's name rather than yourself, writing to yourself, then she can write officially. Then you can respond. I think this is just one way of tackling the same problem. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Louis. Yes. I was just asking the question. Is it consistent with that approach?
Yes, it is, absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And Chair, just one final thing from me. I know you put it enough from me. I do want to pick up on Mark's point around pension liability, because the estimates are in here. So we do look at the pension liability, and actually, from my perspective, we actually, as auditors and nationally, not just us as Grant, and the National Audit Office, do commission PwC to look at the actuarial assumptions that the actuaries will be applying when they do the IAS 19. So we do get a range within which they look at. So that's how we gain our assurance. I think in terms of, interestingly, I suppose, from your perspective and from Mark and Louise, we're now about to enter the 2022 valuation cycle. And it's at that level that I'm not sure Louise and finance team are beginning to have the conversations. That's when you begin to have the conversation actually around the assumptions that are specific to you. So that's when they get set, and then that effectively then locks in your contributions from April 24, I think, going forward. So those are when we would expect management to have the influence or discussions around what you expect your assumptions are, what makes you different to, say, Wolverhampton next door or something like that. So that's when we expect those conversations to happen.
All right. Okay. Any more questions on this?
No, just Chair. I think Grant, you perhaps have got from this discussion that we have been through that document, and from an ARAC perspective in terms of the accounting estimates, and with the one question I had around the fraud risk point, I think it's consistent with certainly my understanding of the issues as raised in that paper.
Councillor Butt.
It's just a comment, Chair. In case I'm not around after May the 5th, I'll say it now. I want to thank our internal auditors for the service they give us. I think the team do a tremendous job, as do the external auditors. And we know we're expecting more, and not necessarily for less these days. I think the point's been made well and truly that auditors are undervalued in the past, and we're having to now pay probably the going rate. And I think it's only going to, their work's going to get more complex, I think, with the way that we're going at the moment. But yeah, just a personal thanks to both teams for the work they do on behalf of the combined authorities.
I think Sandra will be happy, and so will be Peter, if they're listening. I know you made the same point last year as well. I remember. That's very good. Good to praise your own team. That's very nice. Okay. On that issue, I think we've done it. We accept the report. Okay. Next, you say 14. We are on item 14. Yes. Draft annual governance statement.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to present the draft annual governance statement on behalf of Satish Mistry, the Interim Director of Law and Governance. Hopefully everyone's had time to read it. I'll take you through the highlights. The statement differs from last year's statement in that in its development, officers undertook benchmarking exercise with other combined authority statements and used best practice to inform this one. Additionally, previous statements have only been retrospective, whereas this statement also looks forward. So section 1, I should have said it starts at 227. So section 1 of the report itself sets out the purpose of the annual governance statement. It's a statutory document, and ARAC is asked to consider the draft annual governance statement for ARAC's approval and inclusion in the 2021-22 annual accounts. The final statement will be put before the WMCA board in due course as part of the accounts approval process. Please note that 1.4 of the report, this statement's not expected to change, but there's a possibility that an unknown issue may arise as accounts close down is still in process. So 2.5 of the report confirms importantly, that the Interim Director of Law and Governance is satisfied that the system of internal control and assurance is robust and provides visibility of risk and reasonable assurance as detailed in the draft annual governance statement. The draft statement itself is at 231. The statement goes through the scope and purpose of the its statement scope and purpose at pages 231 and 232, and highlights that the authority has put into place a system of internal control at to a reasonable level. The statement meets the requirements of the law, and the authority demonstrates compliance with the 7 core principles of good governance as set out in the 2016 Sit for Solace, Delivering Good Governance in Local Government Framework. Pages 233 to 238 set out examples of how the authority demonstrates compliance with these principles. Some of those examples are that the WMCA has undertaken a review of the governance of its formal decision-making bodies. A new business plan has been produced. Collective and individual roles and responsibilities of SLT have been reviewed, and statutory training has been undertaken and introduced for employees in equality, safeguarding and information governance. So finally, the report reiterates at pages 238 and 239 that the Interim Director of Law and Governance is satisfied, that the system of internal assurance is robust, and the papers also set out what was taken into account. Finally, page 240 sets out a table of matters that have been identified as areas of development for the coming year. And that's the sort of forward-looking nature of the statement. I didn't produce the report, the statement, but if you have any questions, I will try to answer. Or my colleague Lorraine is also here, who did, I think, produce the statement. So Lorraine is probably more in a position to answer than me.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much. Any comments? Obviously, it's one of the issues we all have in public authority is what's called Nolan principles. Yeah, that's the base of it anyway. So whatever is going on, I think there was also third line of defense, which is very nicely written. Internal audit. Again, Alan will be happier. That's he already congratulated for third line of defense. So, any other comments, colleagues? Mark.
No, I found it a really helpful conclusion to this meeting, because I think a lot of the things we've talked about at this meeting have gone into giving us the support that is then set out in this statement. I've explained to Satish and Jane. I've got a few minor drafting points which I will pass on in due course, but overall, no, I was very comfortable. Thank you.
Can I thank Jane specifically, because if somebody else is a reporter, you present it, sometimes it's not so easy because it's not your report. Obviously, you present and defend somebody else's work, and it's good. Thank you very much for that. I think we moved on with the private. I already mentioned about 15 that we go in private. Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to my page originally. Yeah, I think.
I'm stopping the recording now.
Yeah, please. Yeah.